Open your cerebral cortex and shift your lobes into upper beta phase, because you are going to have Bitcoin knowledge transmitted directly into your vestibulocochlear. Your host of Bitcoin Knowledge is Trace Mayer, an early Bitcoin advocate since it cost $0.25, but this is not intended to be investment advice. A doctor of jurisprudence, but this is definitely not legal advice. And an investor in core cryptocurrency infrastructure, including Armory, BitPay, Kraken, and Nitagio, but this is not a recommendation of those services. Here, you get fed via direct mind download with pure and free Bitcoin knowledge.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast. This is going to be a review of the first quarter of 2016. So January, the global markets they started off with a big downturn. It looks like 2016 is going to be very interesting. It has been very interesting. But Bitcoin is in forward motion and continues to be. Bitcoin was actually up when the general markets were down. On the podcast, I interviewed Marcelo Lopez from Brazil. He talked about, I thought the most interesting story he brought up was this hotel operator who he doesn't want to be exposed to the Brazilian real. He doesn't want to be exposed to the Brazilian banking system, both of which are imploding right now. And so he takes 60% of his retained earnings and buys Bitcoin every month, about 1,000 Bitcoins a month. And you know, that's a really big use case, that store of value from down in Brazil. Then I had on Eric Lombroso. He talked about segregated witness, and testing on that has been full steam ahead, which is very exciting. And he's also builds a very secure wallet, Msigna. Then we had Pablo Gonzalez also talking about Brazil and what's going on with the markets down there. I think it's just so important for people to understand that there are more people in the world who need Bitcoin than their current fiat systems. And it just solves a big problem for so many people. And then we had on Wayne Vaughn from Tyrion. And Tyrion is very interesting. It uses a Merkle tree and Merkle leaves to create a Merkle root, and then that root's hashed and put into the op return. And so it's a way to put notarizations basically into the blockchain. And so that's a very interesting use case. And from what I understand, since our interview, Wayne actually raised over $1 million for Tyrion. So that's very exciting. February, we had really big just some really big developments. Bitcoin Core 12.0 came out. Major improvements in this node. There was 7x faster signature validation, the ability to limit upload traffic, so if you want to conserve your bandwidth, crash prevention via the memory pool limits so that people can't just kind of bombard your nodes, option to send transactions that can then be fee boosted. That way you can increase the priority, get them into a block sooner if you need to. Automatic usage of Tor while Bitcoin Core is running. You know, that's a great improvement, help increase some of the privacy. Ability for apps to subscribe to notifications with 0MQ. So that's, you know, if we need to be able to get messages out, that's a way to do it. Massively reduced disk usage for wallets. Much faster block assembly for miners. So that's going to help with orphan rates and stuff like that. In addition, there are over 13 other improvements. I just don't really have time to go over all of them. In terms of people we interviewed, I interviewed Mark Friedenbach. He's been a Bitcoin Core developer for, years now. First time I talked to him was clear back in San Francisco, quite a few years ago. Really good interview with him. Also interviewed Evan Duffield. He's the lead developer on the Dash project. So if you want to kind of see what's happening with an altcoin, that's, you know, kind of an interesting interview. Ironically, we did the interview, Dash was at about $2 and now it's around $7. So it's gone up a little bit more than Bitcoin. Matias Bari, another Brazilian. I ran into all these Brazilians at the Latin American Bitcoin Conference. That's where I like to gather a lot of interviews if I can at these conferences. The audio comes out better. So that's why we had a little bit of a theme there. And then Diego Gutierrez, who's working with Sergio de Lerner. Now, Sergio de Lerner, he's found quite a few critical vulnerabilities in Bitcoin, security researcher. Those two are working on Rootstock. And Rootstock looks like it's going to be a really good project. Essentially going to be able to port Ethereum onto Bitcoin. Now, Ether, or the Ethereum project, that's another really big topic in the first quarter of 2016. The market cap of Ether actually hit $1.1 billion. So Ether has just gone tremendous price appreciation. It's gone from about a 40-cent low to about $15 at the high. And it's just generated a ton of volume on Kraken. So that's very exciting. And it'll be interesting to see the development that comes out of Ether. Also the speculation, everybody loves to chase the rabbit. Vitalik himself has said that Ether isn't meant to be a speculation tool or a store value tool. So I hope there aren't a lot of bag holders with Ether, but what goes up must come down, right? Anyways, I went to another conference, another Bitcoin conference. Unfortunately, I had been traveling and I hurt my throat. And so I wasn't able to get interviews, which is very frustrating, which is one of the reasons why we only had Edmund Moy, the former director of the United States Mint. He was our only guest in March. You got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you hurt your throat. Sorry about that. And I had some people I really wanted to interview, like Marco Strang, the CEO of Genesis Mining. I wanted to interview him. There were a couple other people I wanted to interview, but just couldn't quite do it. Ether volume continued strong in March. And I suppose the really big news coming at the end of March, Segregated Witness, the fourth test version on testnet, it seems to be moving all steam ahead. So that's really exciting. If we can get Segregated Witness rolled out, we're going to see some big developments in Bitcoin. It will enable all types of stuff. We also had something called a zero-knowledge contingent payment that got rolled out in the first quarter. Now, this is really interesting because it uses a zero-knowledge proof to make it so that somebody has to pay Bitcoin in order to receive certain information or data. So say you want to sell somebody a prime number, you can require, you can set a transaction up now where somebody has to give you the private keys to move the Bitcoin, or in other words, they have to move the Bitcoin. And in order for you to move the Bitcoin, you have to provide that prime number or that piece of data or information that they want. And so that's a really cool use case for Bitcoin. It could have implications for digital rights management, a lot of other areas. And, that's very exciting. Another thing that I kind of want to talk about is, like Tyrion, for example, begins using Bitcoin and the blockchain for non-monetary uses. Now, this is kind of the fifth network effect of developers, right? And usually when I talk about developers, I'm talking about people actually working on the code. But it also extends to people working on stuff around the code. For example, working on a wallet or working on an exchange, and you have to build code that integrates Bitcoin as opposed to Dogecoin. Like, that's developer effect. Also, I suppose regulators or lawyers or accountants getting familiar with one as opposed to another is another form of network effect that fits in that area. Professionals might be a broader category than just developers. Lawyers, accountants, computer developers, other stuff. So we've got some of these use cases like Tyrion. And there's another one that Ryan Shea and Munib Ali, Dr. Munib Ali from OneName, that they're working on called Blockstack. And it looks really interesting because it's going to, if it's really successful, it'll change the way that miners get rewarded. And so miners could actually be getting rewarded more than just the block reward and more than just the transaction fees. They could be getting paid for these particular use cases that would come out of Blockstack. And that could get really exciting because, as that mining reward increases, it incentivizes more miners to secure the blockchain. So then, we have the most secure blockchain, which reinforces that fifth network effect of people building out stuff like Tyrion and Blockstack, etc. So that's really exciting. So overall, it's been a very good first quarter. Bitcoin Classic, by the way, came and went. Hardly heard a peep out of it. So, all this uncertainty that people like Mike Hearn, our whiny rage quitter, that it was interesting what happened there. Mike Hearn sold all his Bitcoins. Then he writes this big, nasty article. So effectively he front runs everybody, and then the price of Bitcoin drops. So, that's kind of real nice of him, right? But Bram Cohen, who created BitTorrent, he writes this article about whiny rage quitting. And that's what Mike Hearn did. And so I think what we're seeing is that there were some people or interests that wanted to accomplish certain things in Bitcoin, and they got rejected, like denied, and they had to leave. And I think there was probably a lot of money behind them, a lot of Bitcoins that probably got sold in all of the turmoil and whatnot. But I think that they've largely they're out of the project now. Maybe they're over in Ethereum. We've seen a lot of articles, like Nathaniel Popper wrote something in the New York Times, very positive on Ethereum, kind of negative on Bitcoin. So this whole R3 contingent that Mike Hearn works for, they might have just realized they couldn't get what they wanted done in Bitcoin, and so they're going to have to go somewhere else now. Either way, I think it's a good thing for Bitcoin. It's a way to kind of cleanse the community, see how well the immune system works. And so, if we get rid of that uncertainty, if we have the block reward halve in about, only 3 to 4 months now, it looks like going to be mid to early July, that is, I think, going to have a very big impact on the price. Part of it is it's pretty much impossible for us to determine the stock to flow ratios on Bitcoin. And so we don't have a way to calculate or figure out the price elasticity of demand for the transactional demand component. And the transactional demand component, the actual price of the coin is completely irrelevant. Whether it's a nickel or $10,000, you transfer the value over Bitcoin equally as well. Or you are able to use things like Tyrion or Blockstack equally as well. And so then it just leaves a speculative demand component. That speculative demand can turn on a dime. If all of a sudden people aren't worried about whiny rage quitting Mike or all this uncertainty with regards to that stuff, and they decide, I'm going to buy a bunch of Bitcoins. Or we have people like Rossello Lopez's friend in Brazil who's buying 1,000 Bitcoins a month just to store it as a store of value. And there was another person from Mexico who's doing the same thing, only with 50 Bitcoins a month. These small business owners in countries that do not have infrastructure, financial infrastructure, speculative demand coupled with a big restriction in the supply of the float, and the transactional demand increases because of additional use cases, we could see some pressure on the supply-demand area, which could lead to a rise in price, which I don't think it's possible to really calculate that in advance. We don't know what this we don't have a way to figure out the elasticity of demand for transactional demand. And anytime we've seen big changes when it comes to that supply, that transactional supply of coins, there's been a major move in the price. For example, the first halving, $13 to $266 within about a 2 to 3 month period. The Silk Road coins getting seized. $60 at the low to $1,300 a couple months later. When you think about it, the government bought they confiscated over $100 million of Bitcoin. And, sure, Silk Road is down, but then other dark markets popped up. Well, guess what? People had to go out and buy $100 million of Bitcoin. So they squoze the transactional demand component of the supply demand equation, and price went up because you had to sucker people out of their Bitcoins, and in order to do that you had to offer a higher price out of their speculative demand Bitcoins, that is. And then it becomes kind of a self-reinforcing loop, and then you get a blow off top, and then correction and all that stuff. But so I think we're gonna have another mining reward halve. It's going to go from 25 every 10 minutes to 12.5. That's going to be a big change, and so going to be interesting to see what happens as a result of it. I think we've got very kind of blue skies for the rest of 2016. There's a solid roadmap in place by the Bitcoin core team, which is comprised of over 300 contributors to Bitcoin. A couple of them do the heavy lifting, like Peter Wolla, Greg Maxwell, etc. But overall, Bitcoin Core's got a good roadmap going forward. Block Reward's it's going to put the inflation rate of Bitcoin at about 4.9%, which is going to be lower than all but about maybe 20 currencies in the world. So we're not dealing with a double-digit inflation rate anymore. And when you're talking about that transactional demand component, when you're shoving so many new coins into that, coins that in a lot of cases have to be sold in order to pay bills like electricity and hardware and things of that nature, it's gonna be an interesting Q3 and Q4 of 2016 with Bitcoin. I personally think the price is going to go up, and it's been a great time to be accumulating. But I think we're going to see the price kind of go up, maybe plateau, correct? But it's going to be good. So, anyways, that is kind of my update for the first quarter of 2016. I'd recommend going back and listening to some of the interviews if you haven't listened to them already. I like to give the guests the exposure, share it with your friends, as always. Oh, and I think I mentioned in the 2015 year in review about how I put up a resources page on bitcoin.kn where I have a bunch of kind of hacks that I found very helpful, and how you could kind of throw a little bit of change in the tip jar by clicking on those links, and then anything you buy at Amazon over the next 24 hours help support the show. I just like to thank everybody who did that. We've seen a little bit of money come in. It helps pay the audio editor, which saves everybody time. So thanks for doing that. And if you want to throw some more change in the tip jar, that'd be great. So thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of the year, and that's the first quarter 2016 wrap up.
Be sure to get a copy of the free Bitcoin Guide at freebitcoinguide.com. Got a question or suggestion? Record your voice at bitcoin.kn. Don't be shy. To help the show, share bitcoin.kn with friends, post about it on Reddit, and otherwise spam the interwebs. Your iTunes comments and 5-star reviews are very important to us. Please continue tuning in to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast, where we release interviews with the top people in the Bitcoin world. Now take some choline and let that Bitcoin knowledge consolidate.